It's not on. Good evening again. If I could start with the webcasting introduction. This meeting is to be webcast and the chairman will read the following announcement. That's exactly what I'm doing. I would like to remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or other such use by third parties. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. If any public speakers on Zoom do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Please be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting. Members are reminded to activate their microphones before speaking and obviously close them after. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, advice to public and speakers attending the Council Planning Subcommittee, which is on pages 5 to 8. Before I go any further, can I introduce the team up here? My Vice Chair is Councillor Smruti Patel. We have Graham Courtney on the planning side, Laura Kerman on Democratic Services, and Amy doing the webcasting. And I will be a voting chair if necessary. Item 3, apologies for absence, if there are any, please.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Bannott, Councillor Jennings, Judy, Councillor Bob Jennings, Councillor Jogia, Councillor Kaufman, and Councillor Rizvi and Sunga. Apologies for lateness have also been received from Councillor Heap.
I also have apologies from Councillor Aniket Patel.
Chairman, could I just comment for future planning, and it's the planning of council meetings, it's nothing to do with how this individual meeting is planned, that perhaps we should avoid Diwali New Year, because I'm sure some of the apologies will be linked to that fact. So it's just something to bear in mind for the council calendar going forward.
Thank you for that note, yeah. Thank you. Moving on, members. Item 4, declarations of interest. Any member? No.
I have met the objector for Luscious Road, so it's an unpecuniary interest, that's the word I'm after. But I will be voting.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
I have also visited Luscious Road. I've not I met some of the family and did go through the house to see from the garden what impact the development would have. But I've previously never met them.
Thank you. Any other members? No, thank you. Moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 28th of September, which have been circulated. Councillor Pond.
Yes, Chairman. There's a bit of gobbledygook at the foot of page 13, minute number 66, and the spacing of this small street scene. I think that's just a bit of garbled prose. I think it just means it would harm the openness and spacing of the street scene in this area or this vicinity or whatever.
Sorry, what is it you need, James? Sorry, would not.
Chairman, it's the word small is wrong. So it shouldn't say this small street scene.
Yes, so
it should say the street scene in this vicinity or whatever.
Yeah, I'm happy with that amendment. Are we all happy to remove the word small? Thank you. Any other comments on the minutes? Can I take them as agreed? Thank you, everybody. I will sign them later with that alteration. Moving on, item, any other, sorry, I'm going to go back. Any other business?
May be worth mentioning, Chairman, apropos of a point of order I raised 3 or 4 months ago, that there was a meeting today of the Epping Forest Association of Local Councils at which there was round condemnation of the new planning system, and they are going to ask, I believe, for a planning officer, senior planning officer, to attend the next meeting of the local council's liaison forum.
Okay. This isn't the forum for, but I take your note, but it's really not the format to debate that one, but I take your point on board. Any other business, Laura, on your side?
No other business, Chair.
I just have an update for members, just as a matter of interest. Those of you that were at the meeting on the 3rd of August, we heard an application at 2 Green Lanes, and part of our recommendation was that we considered a possible section 215 notice. It was to do with a derelict car and the upkeep. I'm pleased to be able to report that John Ayres, the enforcement officer, has told me that the vehicle has been cleared. So we have made some progress for them. Thank you. I thought I'd just share that with you. Moving on, item 7, Epping Forest District Council Planning Policy Briefing Note. It's there as a briefing note. Thank you. Item 8, site visits. Any member have? Excellent. Moving on, we then go on to the planning applications. The first one tonight is EPF 065422, 231 High Road. If we go to the officer's presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. This application is for the installation of one additional air conditioning unit to the rear of 231 High Road, Loughton. It is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, and is before members due to an objection from the Town Council, the LRA Plans Group and 2 neighbours. This application follows a previous refusal for an additional air conditioning unit. The previous refusal was solely due to the lack of information regarding noise impact on neighbours. There are already 6 air conditioning units on the rear part of the building, just be seen here, with this pink one being the proposed new one. So this, as I say, proposes to add just one additional unit close to the main building and as far from neighbours on Priory Road as possible. The additional unit is proposed to allow for maintenance of temperature and fresh air within the unit following a refurbishment. The current occupiers of the site, I believe, are Specsavers, who use delicate equipment and require the temperature to be appropriately controlled. Visually, the proposal will add just one additional unit to the existing flat roof, where, as I said, 6 units exist. The unit is similar in size and appearance to the existing units. Unlike the previous application, a noise report has been submitted as part of this application. This will be where the new air conditioning unit is, and here you can see the existing air conditioning units. The submitted noise report has been assessed by Environmental Health, who raised no objection, since the noise created from the unit would be below the background level. Nonetheless, a condition has been recommended requiring the unit cease being used if the noise level exceeds the prevailing background noise level. As such, the application is considered to now be acceptable and is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Back to you, members.
Thank you. In the absence of the ward councillors, Councillor Pond, I believe, has...
Oh, apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. I have spoken to both Councillor Jennings and Councillor Kaufman, who offers his sincere apologies for a clash with a business appointment tonight. I think in general they are satisfied with the comment and conditions imposed by the officers, with 2 queries. First of all, in the conditions on page 22, paragraph number 2, the development hereby permitted shall be carried out and retained strictly in accordance with the following approved plans. Which ones? They're not listed. Normally they list the plan numbers. So that, I think, is a bit of attention from Mr. Prince required. And the second suggestion is on proposed condition number 3, which was to add at the end, and the air conditioning unit shall not be operated outside the hours 800 to 2000 Monday to Saturday. In other words, not at all on Sundays. And the reason for that is that the bevy of air conditioners, I don't know what the collective noun is for air conditioners, a hum possibly, but the noise to be derived by 6 air conditioning units can be excessive. I realise that they have equipment in their consulting rooms, but there seems to be no reason to operate it on Sundays or around night, and that of course is also the green thing to do.
Thank you.
Can I just, sorry, Councillor Bond, can I just ask for those times again? 8 o'clock in the morning until...
Can we delegate the planning officers to insert the correct drawing numbers? Thank you. And
Yeah, and let me just apologise for that. That oversight there was clearly a mistake. Apologies.
Whether anyone ever proofreads these agendas, that we do occasionally get these glitches.
I think we all speed read them, to be honest. Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, I've got really a general point to make. I just wonder if the officer could go back to the site plan. That's it. Yeah, we used to get that sort of plan in the agenda, which is much more informative than the sort of site plans we get now. That the important thing about this sort of plan is it actually shows the street numbers. And I noticed 2 of the objections come from 11 and 15 Priory Road, which are actually shown on that map. They're not shown on the maps that we get with the agendas these days. What we get now is inferior to that sort of site plan. Is it possible to go back to that sort of site plan which we used to receive? Not on all applications. So I'm making a general point.
Thank you. I think we'll bear that in mind for the future. I think the plan on the agenda is indicative only, whereas the block plan in the drawings is there for us all to see. I do take your point and we will discuss it. Thank you. I just have some concerns as to whether this shop might operate on a Sunday. So I don't know the answer to that. I think it would be unreasonable to not have the air conditioning on if it was open on a Sunday.
Chairman, I think the ward members would be happy if the same hours of 0800 to 2000 were applied on Sundays.
I'm happy that with that amendment, to put it to the members and the officer's recommendation. Sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Owen, then Councillor Lyon.
Could we just stipulate that it's only on when the shop's open?
They may wish to put it on half an hour before they get there. I don't. I think I'm happy with the 8 till 8, but I take your point. Councillor Lyon.
Thank you, Chairman. Picking up on Councillor Pond's point about all the units, I mean, have we been able to assess the total impact, or is the impact only on this particular one? So the aggregated noise would not be a problem, I'm assuming.
I'm not an expert on noise reports, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on noise reports, but obviously, the noise report would be for this particular unit. Obviously, the background noise would also, I assume, take into account the existing units, which would obviously have an impact in terms of what's an appropriate level, I guess, because it would be seen against, or be heard against, sorry, not seen, those existing. It would be unreasonable to ask for a noise report for the existing because they already exist, they're already there, we have no control over those. I'm not sure we could justify restricting the use of those particular, the other 6. So we are only looking at this one.
Councillor Nyland?
Yeah, my concern is the properties at the rear there. I don't know whether, 5 and an additional one is going to make any significant difference, but is there anything we can do to sort of mitigate that as a potential issue?
I think having visited the site, there are air conditioning units on the rear of the shop two up, which are much, much nearer 1, 2 and 11 than the one that we're proposing here. Again, I take your point, but I think the officers have covered that. Members, the recommendation is to...
Apologies, I just want to come in and I'm not going to pretend to... I'm not going to give any weight to the necessary accuracy of it, but I have just had a quick look on Google to see what the opening hours of the shop are. And it does suggest 9 a.m. until 5:30, so certainly 8 until 8 would be more than sufficient if that is what members wish to proceed with.
And it gives them the chance to turn it off when they leave if they so wish. Thank you. Members, the recommendation of officers is to approve this application with the changes to the hours of operation and the drawing numbers inserted. I'll be happy to go to a vote. Could all those in favour please show?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That application has been approved. Thank you. Moving on to the next application, EPF 087822, 32 Lushes Road.
Apologies, I was still sharing. I've stopped sharing and now I've reshared again. Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for a single-storey rear extension and an outbuilding at 32 Lushes Road. It is before committee since there is an objection from the Town Council and the detached neighbour. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. The application site is an end-of-terrace property on the northern side of Lushes Road, and the proposals can be seen here. The property is currently unextended, although does contain 2 outbuildings to the rear of the garden. This shows the existing elevations. As can be seen, the land raises to the rear of the garden here. This shows the existing elevations, as can be... Oh, no, apologies. So this is the existing site and the relationship with number 34, Lushes Road, which you can just see on this photograph benefits from a 2-storey side extension, which was granted consent in 2007. This shows the relationship with the attached neighbour, which is also unextended. These slightly blurry photographs are the 2 existing outbuildings. This shows a bird's eye view of the site and the surroundings. As can be seen, there are several large outbuildings within neighbours' gardens. You can just see one there. So the proposed rear extension would be 4 metres in depth and would extend the kitchen and allow for a ground floor bathroom to be provided. The outbuilding is proposed for use as a home gym. The proposed extension would be flat roofed to a height of 3 metres. The outbuilding would have a pitched roof with an eaves height of 2.5 metres and a ridge height of 3 metres. The proposals are considered to be appropriately designed for the site and the surrounding area, whilst the extension would extend 4 metres along the shared boundary. Sorry, I'm losing my space. Yeah, so whilst it would extend 4 metres, along this shared boundary, a 3 metre extension could be erected without planning consent, and up to 6 metres could be sought for a prior approval. The distance between the extension and the shared boundary with number 34 would preclude any loss of amenity to these neighbours from the extension. The proposed outbuilding is larger than could be built under permitted development. However, if the pitched roof were removed, then the outbuilding would not require consent, as it would be 2.5 metres in height. Concern has been raised by the neighbour that the existing dwelling is being used as a HMO. There's no evidence that this is the case, and the proposals are not being assessed as, on this basis. However, a condition is nonetheless recommended restricting any overnight accommodation or separate use within the outbuilding. And I will just quickly pause there. I have looked at re-looked at the conditions, and we specify building. I think we just need to make a slight change to say outbuilding on that condition. So subject to these suggested conditions, the application is considered to be acceptable and is recommended for approval. Back to you, members.
Thank you. We have 2 ward members on this, Councillors Dwecky and Allgood.
Yes, I've just come back today from visiting the neighbours to witness some of the objections that she was doing. I'm quite happy to accept that we are looking at this on its merits, e.g. that it is a gym with a sink and a toilet area. And if at any point it does become residential, then that must be put in, that it's not to happen. The objection re the rear extension. As a flat roof, she has no actual objections to that, and that's okay. The only issue I would like to raise, can we put back the plans, please? Okay, so the patio doors to the rear, which are actually a corner piece, so not only does it go out to the rear, it goes out to the side. Now, it is elevated, as we've said, so therefore, if you're having doors that are actually viewing, then you're actually viewing the neighbour from that particular site. So I have to say, I'm not opposing or wouldn't oppose necessarily the rear patio doors, but to have side ones which actually look out on a fence, to me seems excessive and unreasonable, and I'd like other people to consider that. That will be the only objection from the neighbour, and I tend to agree that's for the extension. As for the building that's is a gym, does it? I would object to the 2.5 metres of pitch roof. I think there's a case for lowering it with a different type of, if it doesn't have to be flat, then maybe a pent roof instead, because that does take it well and truly above what is already there, and therefore does impose on the site, especially as it is raised. Again, I welcome other people to make some comments.
Councillor Nwick.
For me, it's a difficult one because I've not seen any issues for me here, and the only concern is the size of the roof. If we can suggest for it to be reduced, then yes. Beside that, I've got no issues.
Councillor Pond.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the ward councillors, particularly as the height of the building and also the fenestration on the flank side. But I'm a little concerned that paragraph 5 is not well drafted. I would say that should read, the building hereby permitted shall not be occupied between 2400 and 0700 every day. And because I've looked and failed for, in words and phrases legally defined, for the the definition of the word overnight. And I would have thought whether a residential use overnight, such as someone snoring away in a bed, is any worse for the neighbours than someone pumping iron at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. So I think if we consent this application, we need to restrict the use of the building at the dead of night. And be reasonable, they might want to use the gym after work, so that's why I would suggest 2400 to 0700.
Councillor Owen.
Just on the height of the outbuilding, as a gym user, I'm just over 6 foot. I do overhead press. I think if you limit the height of the roof, you're probably going to get rid of a lot of exercises and treadmills and stuff that might want to go in there. So I'll just be a bit cautious on that. And then on the comment about the side glazing, I mean, they built a 2-storey extension pretty close to their boundary and then are objecting that they might overlook them putting some glass on the side. But I mean, if that second story wasn't there, it probably wouldn't even overlook them. So I think I have a bit of sympathy with the builder here as well.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Wixley.
Well, just on that point, the side windows, as I understand it, are going to be looking out onto a fence. So I'm not quite sure how high that fence is, but it seems to me there wouldn't be much opportunity to overlook a neighbouring property if there's a high fence there. I don't know if the officer can shed some light on that, clarify the situation.
It's in line. It's in line with the fence.
Yeah, sure.
Because I went in today.
Sorry.
It's a 6-foot fence.
Thank you. Councillor Pond.
Just to say, experience of this sort of thing in the past, the problem is that we are considering the consent for a new building. We have no jurisdiction over the fence because the owner, if it's his fence, could demolish it tomorrow, and it might be next door's fence. I don't know, but it is impermanent in planning terms.
Thank you. Anybody wish to come? I've got a couple of points on the conditions. We haven't got hours of working, and I think we should have. And if I could ask the officers, are we able to restrict the hours of use of the outbuilding between 2400 and 700?
Yeah, we can certainly put that on as a condition. We can enforce, I mean, obviously enforcement officers don't work that time of night, but there are ways of monitoring that kind of thing. Yeah, whether, again, members need to think whether it be reasonable. If you have an outbuilding, is it not your choice when you use it, as long as you're respectful to your neighbours, which I like to think most people are. But certainly it is possible to put that condition on, yeah. Yes.
I think we have pretty much the strongest condition we have on overnight accommodation. Yeah, Councillor Allgood.
Bear in mind it's the height of the actual outbuilding that we're talking about. Can we ask, or can it be made so it's into the ground more? Because actually the slope, you could cut away the slope and then make it level, and it's not actually the height of the building, it's the fact that that is then much higher than everybody else's. So if you actually levelled it to where it starts, you will probably find that drops you about half a metre, and I don't think you'd have any objections at all.
I think it's a great suggestion, but it's not what's in front of us at the moment. We've got to look at what's in front of us. It's certainly not something we could suggest, and definitely not something we could condition. We've got to assess the application here. If it's refused, that may be a sensible way for them to come back.
Councillor Brooks.
This was formerly my ward for 4 years, so I know Luscious Road quite well. I've walked up and down it a lot. Two things, I just feel that it does actually, this proposed extension will, I feel, impact on the neighbours. The street is so crowded out there. These plots are small. We aren't talking about Alderton Hill. We're not talking about York Hill. These are tiny plots. And I think perhaps that people don't fully grasp, unless you know it quite well, how such a thing that looks quite small on our screen is going to impact on the people next door. I mean, it is different when you're replacing a shed by a gym. And I certainly feel we must put all the plan, if we vote for it, we must put all the planning conditions on it we possibly can, because all of us have had problems with the beds and sheds syndrome.
Yeah, I think there are other avenues for a nuisance in the building rather than this way. If members wish to put forward a condition, we can certainly consider it. Councillor Pond?
In which case, I'd like to try to balance up the comments which members have made, and I suggest we consent the application, but with the alteration to condition 5, the building hereby permitted shall not be occupied between 2400 and 0700 and shall not be used then as the condition reads at the moment. I don't think we can, as the officer says, we can't refuse the idea of the peaked roof because that's what's before us. Personally, I don't think it's the roof itself which will be oppressive, but it might well be the use made of the building. So for those reasons, I'd not dissent from a motion to consent this application, but I'd change condition 5 as outlined.
Councillor Murray. Just a second. Go through.
If we're talking about giving permission for the home gym, it's completely unreasonable to say that it can't be used before 7 o'clock in the morning, because that's not realistic. A lot of people, I know Luscious Road very well as well, because I used to represent it for even longer than 4 years, but we won't go there, that's history. And I would imagine, I mean, I don't know the residents in this particular house, but I would imagine a lot of people in that road go to work at 7 o'clock, because that's the kind of work they do. And therefore, using the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning would be regarded as perfectly normal. And most public gyms open at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I think it would be completely unreasonable to say, yes, you can have a home gym, but you can't use it before 7 o'clock in the morning. A, it's unenforceable, but 2, it's not a reasonable condition anyway, because that's not how people live. They go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and they use the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Well, you're an early bird, Councillor Murray. I'd be content with.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Owen.
Not to get in on the hours, but I go to the gym at 5, so I do think it's unreasonable, this condition, if I'm honest.
This isn't a competition, but you're winning so far. Members, I'm going to take this forward for a vote with the officer's recommendation to accept. Without a condition, the only condition being the change to the outbuilding rather than the building that was mentioned at the beginning. Can we go to a vote on that basis, members?
Sorry, so everybody can hear. Are you voting on the application as is? Or
the application as is with the change to the condition outbuilding. That's right.
I think you need to vote on that change of condition.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think we need to echo that was a suggestion from us. But you did mention working hours.
Members, can we go to a vote on including the hours of working in the conditions and also changing the objection 5 to change the word building to outbuilding? Can we vote? Are we accepting that as a condition? Two separate conditions, yeah. Can we not, if we agree both, can't we vote on both? Yeah. I think so. Okay, if you want to, okay, we'll do an individual vote, right. Those in favour, please show of including the hours of working as a condition.
Hours of working for the builders, yeah?
Yep. Yep.
Construction hours of working, yeah?
Thank you.
8-4.
Those against? The hours of working of construction. No, the hours of working of construction.
Chairman, can you do that vote again? Because
Yeah,
I was confused as well.
Yeah.
So let's make it absolutely clear.
It is the hours, the construction hours of working, our normal standard condition. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous.
The next change is to, in condition 5, to change the word building to outbuilding. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Can we now go to a vote on the officer's recommendation to grant permission for this development with those minor changes to the conditions? All those in favour, please show.
Six.
Those against?
Four.
Abstentions?
2.
That application has been granted. Thank you, members. Moving on to the next application, EPF 141422, 40 Westbury Lane.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application relates to the retention of a flat-roofed rear dormer, a pitched roof front porch, and some additional roof lights and external alterations to the building. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, and is before members due to an objection from the parish council and 2 neighbouring residents. The application site is a detached dwelling on the south side of Westbury Lane. Planning consent was previously granted for extensions. However, what is being constructed does not conform to the approved plans. What is now being proposed is a compromise between what was granted consent and what is currently being built or has been built. This is the front of the dwelling that's currently being extended. The pitched roof dormer is slightly higher in the roof than was originally permitted. This just shows the dwelling within its street scene. Concern has been raised by neighbours that the rear extension is higher than approved. The proposed plans and previous approved plans both show the same height to the single-storey rear extension. Therefore, if the extension is deemed to be built higher than this, then that doesn't form part of this application. I'm not sure if that's clear, but I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. As can be seen here, both numbers 36 and 38, you can just see behind this tree here, Westbury Lane have large flat roof dormers. This shows the small rear dormer, which is proposed to be removed and replaced with a roof light. This shows the relationship with number 42 Westbury Lane. This is the view of the proposal from the neighbour's garden at number 38. This is the flat-roofed dormer that is proposed for retention, and this is the small dormer that I just showed you that would be removed. And this just shows the boundary between the application site and number 38. So this is the small patio area just outside number 38's rear door, and this is the wall of number 40. So as can be seen here, the main difference between the approved scheme and that proposed with regards to the front elevation is the slight change to this dormer. So this top one is as approved, this is as built, and this is as proposed. So slightly changed location and the fenestration. Also, it is proposed to have a pitched roof over this front porch projection, which wasn't previously approved. These show the as approved elevations. So this included 2 small rear dormer windows, that can be seen here, and some roof lights in the sides. In place of this, there would be a larger flat roof dormer has been added, and a roof light would be placed here instead of the smaller dormer, and instead of what's been built, which is this other dormer here. So when comparing the as approved plans and the proposed plans, it is not considered that the changes are significant or harmful to the overall appearance of the area, nor would there be any additional loss of amenity as a result of these amendments. As such, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Back to you, members.
Thank you for the presentation. We have one speaker on this, the agent, who is, I believe, on Zoom. You have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes.
Hello. Sorry, hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, Chair, councillors and Epping Forest DC staff. We acknowledge that a number of modifications were made on site, thought to have been for the good of the scheme, but without all implications being considered in detail. They weren't really done to cause such trouble as probably has arisen. We've now proposed removing the rear middle dormer, which is built much larger than it should have been, and replace it with a roof light in the roof slope. We consider the side ground floor height to the rear extension to be built as it was approved. We don't consider anything was changed there. A number of windows and a door have been removed in the side flank towards number 38, and a roof light's been added over the stairs in lieu of some of these windows that have been removed. We realise that some of these windows at certain levels should be obscured, and if necessary, the roof light could, if that's necessary. The external finishes were also changed in as far as the tiles couldn't be obtained due to supply chain difficulty. So we do have grey tiles, which are not what we originally approved, but there are a lot of different materials in the street. And we also always proposed painted render, because that seemed to have been a problem, an objection at some point. So we trust that the changes we've made and the adjustments will allow the scheme to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm one of the ward councillors on this, and I've had a couple of visits during the build, and I'm grateful to the planning officer's presentation, because it did make it a lot clearer than looking at drawings and walking up and down the street. It was quite confusing as to what was happening on the drawings. None of us like retrospective, but I think with the removal of the overbuilt dormer, we're probably back in a similar position to we were on the approval. The rear height of the ground floor extension, that either is or isn't in accordance with the drawings. Some people are saying it isn't, some people are saying it is, but that will have to be determined, but presumably it's not part of this application. The grey tiles, I agree, there's a complete mix down Westbury Lane of all sorts of styles and colours. I'm minded at the moment, pending the rest of the debate, that I would go with the officers on this one. Any other member wish to speak? No other comments to make? We can therefore go to a vote on the officer's recommendation to approve with the conditions you have before you. All those in favour, please show.
11, Chair.
Those against?
0.
And abstentions?
1.
Thank you, members. That application has been approved.
Thank you.
And our last item tonight, EPF 160622, 7 Nafferton Rise.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for a part single storey, part 2-storey side and rear extension at 7 Nafferton Rise. The application is before members since there is an objection from the Town Council, although this largely relates to a concurrent application for roof extensions and an objection from a neighbour. So this shows the existing rear of the house and the relationship with number 6 Nafferton Rise here. This shows the location of the proposed extension and the relationship with number 8 Nafferton Rise. I'll just say this photograph seems slightly misleading. It certainly misled me at first glance, as this is actually a raised flower bed and not the land level, which is behind. So whilst there is a change in land levels, the application site is on higher land than the neighbour, and this difference is estimated to be around 700 to 800 millimetres. It isn't actually at this point here. It is lower. It's at this point here. So the existing house is a 4-bed detached dwelling with a double garage. These are the elevations of the existing house. So this shows a single-storey permitted development side extension, which was confirmed as being lawful for a recent lawful development certificate. That's this bit here. So this proposal seeks permission for a similar single-storey side extension, although this proposal is actually set 1 metre off the boundary, so is further from the neighbour. It also proposes a 1.7 metre 2-storey projection that wraps around the side at first floor level. This would enlarge the 4th bedroom on the first floor and the kitchen diner on the ground floor. So the side extension would be flat roofed to a height of 3 metres. The 2-storey extension would have a pitch roof to a ridge height of 7.45 metres. This element, or this part of the development would be 3 metres from the boundary at its closest point. So I'm just going to flick back here. So that would be at this point here. It's approximately 3 metres from that shared boundary. So this application is a revision following a previous refusal. The previous application was refused due to the impact on the neighbour at 8 Nafferton Rise. The difference between the application, this application and the previous refusal is the removal of this section of the ground floor and also the removal of this side window, which, given the level changes on site, would have overlooked the neighbour's garden. Whilst, again, I'm just going to flick back. Oh no, sorry, it's down here. Whilst there is a picture window being proposed here, that is 4.39 metres away from the boundary, and as such, is not considered to result in any loss of privacy. So the amendments to the scheme are considered to have overcome the previous reasons for refusal. The single-storey side extension would cause less harm than the permitted development fallback, which can be built closer to the boundary and also could include flank windows. The 2-storey additions are appropriately designed and are sufficient distance from the shared boundary to ensure that there would be no detrimental loss of amenity to the neighbours, even when taking into account the change in land levels. There is currently no condition suggested restricting windows being installed within the flank walls, so I would suggest that this be added. However, subject to this condition and the other suggested conditions, it is considered that the application is acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We have one speaker. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Good evening, Chairman, all the councillor and all the officers. My name is Cho Tang. I live in number 8, Neverton Rise. As said by the planning officer, the application was a revised version of the early applications. The letter was refused because, quote, excessive harm to the living conditions of neighbours in relation to the loss of outlook and loss of privacy, unquote. Yes, the side window of the original versions was removed, but in the current application, there's instead a full-length picture window on the ground floor of the two-story extension wall. The full-length window, although a few meters back from the fence, is facing directly towards our garden, but due to the elevation of our back garden, which is higher on the back of the garden, so the view from the window will overlook into that part of the garden. In the same way as the actor on the stage can look up into an audience up in the back row. So by being that, we will suffer a loss of privacy of that. As for the single-story extensions, the depth of it has been reduced, yes, to 6.94 meter, but it's still quite considerable. And it's 3 meter in height and will be situated just 1 meter from our fence. These factors combined will materially overwhelm our gardens. So overall, in our view, neither the harm from the loss of the outlook and the loss of privacy have been addressed in these revised applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you turn your microphone off?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I think our ward counts. Yes, Councillor Baldwin.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I appreciate this new application is goes some way towards the previous reasons why it was rejected. And I'm also concerned about the pending application for, although I know we're not taking that into consideration tonight, but I am also concerned about the pending application, which I appreciate that is a separate application. In all, this does seem to be a considerable bulking out of this property. And I do tend to agree with the objector that although this has been reduced, and I see from the plan views and the flank views that this has been reduced in size, nonetheless, it is considerable, isn't it? It is 7 metres in length, a mere 1 metre from the neighbour's party wall. That's on the ground floor. And I do believe that there are issues here of intrusion into the amenity space of number 8. And I do also agree with the officers saying about having a condition to prevent windows in the flank side. I believe in the report somewhere it does state that there will be a window into the flank of the first floor. So if we just clarify that that is the case.
Apologies, I haven't got the report in front, so I haven't seen where that says that, but I'm just going to quickly reshare the... No, that's all right, it's not a problem. I just reshare the screen. So this bottom one is the proposal. There's obviously 2 windows here, but they're existing windows in the first floor flank elevation. There are no other additional windows apart from this picture window, which both I referenced and as did the neighbour. So this is the only flank window being proposed, additional flank window being proposed in this latest application.
Thank you for that. So taking in the round, I do think that this is a very considerable bulking out, and I do think there are overlooking issues. Again, as the objector brought up, there is a question of the levels, the slope of the garden, which I do think increases the likelihood of overlooking. Again, the flank windows on the side, I do believe could be a case of light pollution, and I know, as another councillor pointed out, party walls are an impermanent feature. So I do not think we can necessarily say that just because there is a fence there, 6 foot high, 2 metres high, that necessarily means there will not be any light pollution. So I'll stop there. All in all, I'm having difficulty supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Bond.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm reading through the papers and listening to what Councillor Baldwin and the objector have been saying. And I don't see how the reason for refusal last time, quoted at the bottom of page 38, and numbered 1, I think that still applies. I think it's bulk and the likelihood in overlooking and loss of outlook and loss of privacy in particular would still apply. And so I don't see why we are consenting, officers are recommending consenting this proposal when they, in my view, rightly refused 3287 of 21. I just don't see the difference.
Do you want to answer the differences?
Well, I think obviously, I have pointed out the differences in terms of the removal of the reduction in the depth and the removal of the window. But I think one of the other significant differences is the lawful development certificate that does show that a very similar side extension, and actually much worse side extension, could be constructed without planning permission. They could actually go right up to the boundary. They could add windows as being ground floor windows. They don't even have to obscure glaze those. That's only upper level windows that have to be obscure glazed under permitted development. So there could be a much worse situation if a side extension was built under permitted development. It's a fallback position that we do give some weight to. How much weight is up to us as the deciding body. But it is that is another material difference between this and the previous refusal.
Councillor Wexley then.
Yeah, just to clarify, are you saying that, I'm asking the officer, if he's saying that what is proposed is less harmful than what could be permitted by permitted development?
In terms of the side extension, obviously the rear extension cannot, or this particular rear extension cannot be constructed. I'm just going to, once again, apologies, share the screen. So as I say, so this is obviously what's being proposed now. If we just concentrate on the single-story extension, because at the moment that's what we're talking about. So this is what's being proposed. Obviously there are no windows here. It's a metre set off the boundary. This is what's been confirmed as permitted, which is closer to the boundary and in fact could be built right up to the boundary if they so wish. There aren't any windows shown in there, but they could put windows in that flank elevation. So certainly purely focusing on the side extension, I would say this is less harm, but we do have to consider the fact that there's also a first floor addition proposed here.
Councillor Wexley coming back.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this was approved, and I think from what you're saying, it could be viewed as being less harmful than what could be done under permitted development. So could permitted development rights be removed if what is before us today is approved?
They could be, but I'm not entirely certain what the purpose of that would be. They couldn't build this extension and then go out further at the side, for example, because you have to take the entire development into consideration, and because they'd have built the first floor, they then couldn't build they couldn't enlarge the ground floor. So I guess the only, sorry, I keep going back and forth to share my screen. I mean, I should just leave it up. So if we go back to what's being proposed, so yeah, so there couldn't be any change to this under permitted development if this were allowed and built. I suppose the only thing they could do is they could build an extension here, and they could potentially, although there's not really any room to build any side extension here, so they could extend out the back under permitted development if they didn't attach it to this, but actually they couldn't build anything attached to this under permitted development if this were allowed. But it's within our power to condition that permitted development rights are removed if we consider that is necessary.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I don't think I need to speak. I've been superseded by the other Leighton Orient fan here tonight, Councillor Wixley.
Welcome to my world. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Owen.
I just want to be really clear on that permitted development point. I think the side windows, if they built this, could they then stick in a side window and claim that's permitted development, or would that not be allowed?
If we don't remove that right, then yes, they potentially could. There's always an argument about building something that it's got to comply with the approved plans, and certainly if they put the windows in as they constructed it, I think we would potentially have grounds to say they're in breach. But if they've constructed the extension as approved and then later put windows in there under permitted development, then that would be something they could do if we don't add the additional condition that I suggested, which would be to restrict any windows within the flank elevation, including ground floor windows.
Councillor Pond.
Yes, I think that is an important point, and so that ought to be inserted in conditions. The other thing that, as far as I can see, is missing from the conditions is hours of working. They need to be inserted unambiguously given the constrained nature of the site and the effect it would have on the neighbours.
Thank you. Members, can we go to vote on the condition changes? Firstly, the standard hours of working. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous.
The further condition regarding no windows in the flank walls. With those two conditions added, the officer's recommendation is to approve with conditions. Can you all please show if you wish to agree with that? Approving the application with the additional conditions.
Eight.
Against?
4.
Abstentions? None of them here, are we? Thank you, members.
0.
Thank you, members. That has been approved. Going back to the agenda, item 13, exclusion of public and press.
No exclusion.
Thank you. Thank you, members. We close the meeting at 4 minutes past 8. Thank you.